Why are women unretiring? Retirement isn't happening the way we thought it would. I was talking to someone yesterday and she said, I'm not retiring, I'm just changing how I retire. This was the same for me. I unretired. And I thought that was actually a much better way of describing what's happening to a lot of women now. Because when we were younger, retirement was very clear, wasn't it? You worked, you retired, you stopped. That was the model. But I don't actually know many women in their late 50s or 60s who have properly stopped working. They've changed what they do, such as they've reduced hours, they've started small businesses, they do a bit of consulting, or maybe part-time work. They help with grandchildren and then maybe work a few days. Some even rent out a room or sell online, bookkeeping from home, or project work. It's not retirement, it's something else. And I think part of the reason is very simple and very unromantic: money. People don't like talking about this, but it's true. If you retire at 60 and live until 90, that's 30 years. 30 years is not a short period of time. And I think our generation was brought up with this idea that retirement was the reward at the end. You worked hard, you retired, you relaxed. But the maths around that model has changed. People live longer. Pensions are different. Divorce rates are higher. More women have worked part-time over their lives, so pensions are smaller. And we know the cost of living is higher. So for a lot of women, continuing to work is not a lifestyle choice, it's just reality. And this is my reality, so I created Second Bloom. That said, for some women, it's not just about money, because some women could retire and they don't want to. And I think that could surprise people, because women at or beyond retirement age are one of the fastest growing entrepreneurial groups. They already make up a significant share of the solopreneurship economy, and their participation is accelerating, not plateauing. And globally, around 15% of all solopreneurs are already over 65. I know women who left their jobs and instead of retiring, they started something else completely different. One woman I know started a dog walking business. Another started bookkeeping for small businesses. Another rents out holiday cottages. And as I mentioned, consulting. Another one sells artwork online. And another chum teaches online courses. None of them would call themselves entrepreneurs. They would just say they're creating work that suits their life now. And I think that's a big shift. When we were younger, work shaped life. Now, life is starting to shape work. That took some saying. I also think something else is happening in your 50s or 60s that nobody really talks about. You start to realise how fast time is moving. When you're 25, 10 years feels like forever. When you're 60, 10 years feels like about 5 minutes. And that changes how you think about work and retirement and life. You start asking different questions, not what should I do to be successful, but how do I want to spend my time? How much money do I actually need? How much stress do I want? Do I want responsibility or freedom? Do I want routine or flexibility? Or do I want to work with people or on my own? Those are very different questions from the ones we asked in our 20s or 30s. I think another big shift is this idea of what a career even is. It used to be very linear: job, promotion, promotion, maybe manager, if you're lucky, senior manager, if you're super lucky, director, and then you retire. It's a straight line. Now it's much more messy. People have portfolio lives now. A bit of this, a bit of that, different income streams, different types of work. And actually, that suits midlife quite well, because by this point, most women don't want to be climbing ladders anymore. They want control. They want flexibility. They want to decide when they work, who they work with, and how much they work. It's less about status and more about autonomy. And autonomy becomes very important in midlife. I think this is more important than money sometimes. But starting again later in life is also quite scary. And I don't think we should pretend it isn't. When you start something at 25, you think you've got forever to fix mistakes. And not only that, it's like oodles of confidence. When you start something at 60, you don't feel like you've got forever. The decisions feel more important, more permanent, more real. And I think that's why midlife decisions are actually very different from younger life decisions, because you don't have unlimited time to experiment. And so you have to think more carefully. Not overthink, but think properly. Look at the numbers, look at the time, look at the lifestyle, look at the consequences. Because every decision now affects the next 10 or 20 years quite significantly. I sometimes think that midlife is the first time in life where you actually design your life instead of just following the path that was in front of you. A path such as school, job, relationship, house, children, career, responsibilities, retirement. Again, very linear. A lot of that just happens because that's what everybody does. But somewhere in your 50s or 60s, you suddenly realise nobody is actually in charge now except you. And that's both quite freeing and quite frightening, because you can change things, but you also have to take responsibility for those decisions. I think that's why so many women are starting businesses or changing careers or working differently later in life. Not because they suddenly become ambitious, because it's the first time they've actually asked themselves, what do I actually want my life to look like? Not what looks good, not what sounds impressive, not what everybody else is doing, but what actually works for them. How much money do I need? How much time do I want? Where do I want to live? How do I want my days to look? These are very practical questions. They're also very big questions. I don't think midlife is about slowing down. And I don't think it's about reinventing yourself either. I don't really like that phrase. I think it's more about redesigning. You don't throw everything away and become a completely different person. You take everything you already know, all your experience, all your skills, all your mistakes, all your lessons, and then you design the next stage of life more deliberately. Less drifting, more deciding. And that's quite a different way of thinking about this stage of life. It was for me. At 62, I decided to create Second Bloom. It's a structured system designed to help midlife women understand what's happening, why it matters, and what their options are through the use of frameworks, tools, and pathways. It's not advice, pressure, or fixing. And I've got to say, I'm quite proud of what I've created. And I'm proud to be one of those women who've unretired.